I never thought I'd end up selling myself to save my mother's life. But there I was, standing in the marble lobby of the Ashford Tower on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, clutching a contract that would change everything. My hands trembled as I read the terms one more time. 6 months of marriage to Damian Cross, billionaire CEO of Cross Industries, in exchange for $500,000. Enough to cover my mother's experimental cancer treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Enough to give her a fighting chance. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and I stepped into the penthouse suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, the autumn leaves painted in shades of gold and crimson. The apartment was enormous, easily 7,000 square feet, furnished with sleek Italian leather and modern art that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. "Ms. Washington, you're early." Damian's voice cut through my thoughts. He stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the afternoon light. At 34 years old, he was devastatingly handsome in that cold, untouchable way that grace magazine covers. His charcoal Tom Ford suit probably cost $15,000, and his Patek Philippe watch gleamed on his wrist, worth at least $200,000. "I wanted to be punctual," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. At 26, I was 8 years younger than him, and I felt every bit of that gap in this moment. My H&M dress, bought on sale for $49, suddenly felt like tissue paper. Punctuality. Good. He turned to face me fully, his gray eyes assessing me with the same cool efficiency he probably used to evaluate business deals. "Did you read the contract thoroughly?" "Yes, Mr. Cross." "Damian," he corrected. "We're going to be married, Naomi. At least pretend we're on a first-name basis." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I read every word, Damian." "Then you understand the terms. We marry next week in a private ceremony. You move in here immediately. For 6 months, you play the role of my devoted wife at all necessary public functions. No romantic entanglements with anyone else during this period. After 6 months, we divorce quietly. You get your money in 3 installments, $100,000 now for your mother's treatment, $200,000 at the 3-month mark, and the final $200,000 when we sign the divorce papers. And you get what you need for your grandfather's will," I said quietly. His jaw tightened slightly. It was the first crack I'd seen in his perfect facade. "My grandfather's will stipulates that I must be married to inherit his controlling shares in Cross Industries." He was old-fashioned, believed a man wasn't truly settled without a wife. "The board is already circling, waiting for me to fail this condition so they can force a buyout." "Why me?" I asked, the question that had plagued me since his lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria Chen, had approached me at the hospital 2 weeks ago. Damian walked to the bar and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. He didn't offer me any. "You're perfect for this arrangement. You're beautiful enough to be believable as my wife, but not famous enough to attract unwanted media attention. You're intelligent. You work as a nurse at Mount Sinai, which makes you respectable. And most importantly, you're desperate." The word stung, even though it was true. I was desperate. My mother, Patricia Washington, had stage 4 breast cancer. The standard treatments had failed, and the experimental immunotherapy at Sloan Kettering was her last hope. Our insurance had denied coverage. The cost? $475,000 for the full treatment protocol. I'd already drained my savings of $32,000, taken on every extra shift I could at the hospital, where I made $68,000 a year as a registered nurse, and borrowed $15,000 from my best friend, Keisha. It wasn't nearly enough. "I understand," I said, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "When do we start?" "Now." He set down his glass and pulled out his phone. My assistant will help you pack your things from your apartment in Crown Heights and move you here today. The wedding is scheduled for next Friday at City Hall. Small ceremony. Just my lawyer and your witness, whoever you'd like to bring. That's it? I asked. No engagement period? No getting to know each other? This isn't a real marriage, Naomi. It's a business transaction. His voice was flat, matter of fact. The less real it is, the easier it will be when it ends. I should have listened to that warning. I should have heard the ice in his voice and understood what I was getting into. But all I could think about was my mother, lying in that hospital bed, her beautiful dark skin ashen, her eyes filled with fear when the doctors gave us the prognosis. 3 months, maybe 6, without the treatment. Okay, I whispered. Good. He pulled out a checkbook, the kind I'd only seen in movies. He wrote with swift, confident strokes and tore off the check, holding it out to me. $100,000. That should cover the initial treatment costs. I took the check with shaking hands. It was real. The amount was printed in his bold handwriting. $100,000 and no cents. Thank you, I managed. Don't thank me. This is a transaction, remember? I need a wife, you need money. We're both getting what we want. He glanced at his Rolex, the kind that cost $85,000. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Victoria will be here shortly to help you with the logistics. Make yourself at home. Your room is the second door on the left down that hallway. My room? I echoed. He raised an eyebrow. You didn't think we'd be sharing a bed, did you? This is a contract marriage, Naomi, not a romance. Heat flooded my cheeks. Of course not. I just assumed. Assume nothing. Read the contract. Everything is spelled out there. He grabbed his briefcase, a Berluti that probably cost $8,000, and headed for the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. One more thing. My mother will likely call you soon. Eleanor Cross can be persistent. Tell her we met at a charity gala 6 months ago. We've been dating discreetly. You're a nurse. Keep it simple. She doesn't need to know the truth. What if she asks questions I can't answer? Make something up. You're intelligent. I'm sure you can handle my mother. There was something bitter in his tone. Something that made me wonder what his relationship with Eleanor Cross was really like. Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that felt like the sealing of my fate. I stood alone in that enormous penthouse, surrounded by wealth I could never have imagined, holding a check that represented both my mother's salvation and my own surrender. I walked slowly down the hallway to my room. It was larger than my entire studio apartment in Crown Heights. A king-sized bed with ivory linens, an ensuite bathroom with a marble soaking tub, a walk-in closet that was currently empty, waiting to be filled with whatever clothes Damien deemed appropriate for his contract wife. I sank onto the bed and pulled out my phone. My mother's photo smiled at me from the lock screen, taken 2 years ago at my nursing school graduation. She looked so healthy then, so proud. I'd promised her I'd find a way to save her. I just never imagined it would be like this. The contract was folded in my purse. I pulled it out and read it again, searching for some clause I'd missed, some escape hatch. But it was airtight. 6 months, $500,000. A marriage in name only. What could possibly go wrong? I laughed bitterly at my own naivety. I had no idea that in just 1 week, everything would change. That one night of weakness would bind me to Damien Cross in a way no contract ever could. That his jealousy would reveal depths I never suspected existed beneath his cold exterior. But that Friday night, as I signed my marriage certificate in a sterile office at City Hall, I still believed I understood the terms of our arrangement. Damien Cross, in his midnight blue Armani suit, me in a simple cream dress from Bloomingdale's that his assistant had purchased for $280. No flowers. No guests except Victoria Chen and Keisha, who kept squeezing my hand like she was afraid I'd bolt. Do you, Naomi Patricia Washington, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I looked at Damien's face, unreadable as marble, and said the words that would change my life forever. I do. The reception was held at Damien's penthouse. By reception, I mean Victoria ordered sushi from Nobu, cost about $800, and we ate in uncomfortable silence while Keisha kept giving me worried looks. She'd known me since we were both students at City College of New York, both of us working multiple jobs to afford tuition. She was the only person besides my mother who knew the truth about this arrangement. "Girl, are you sure about this?" Keisha whispered when we had a moment alone in the kitchen. Her brown eyes were wide with concern. She worked as a social worker in the Bronx, made $45,000 a year, and had seen enough desperate situations to recognize one when she saw it. "I don't have a choice, Keisha. Mama's treatment starts Monday. The first infusion alone costs $78,000. But 6 months married to a stranger? A billionaire stranger who looks at you like you're a stock option?" I glanced through the doorway at Damien, who was discussing something with Victoria, probably already moving on to his next business deal. "It's temporary. I can handle 6 months. I've handled worse." And I had. My father, Marcus Washington, had died when I was 12 years old. Massive heart attack at 41 years old, while working his second job as a security guard. No life insurance. My mother had raised me alone, working as a secretary at a law firm, making $35,000 a year. We lived in a rent-controlled apartment in Crown Heights, $725 a month for a one-bedroom. I slept on the couch until I was 18. My mother made sure I understood the value of education. "School is your way out, baby," she'd tell me every morning before I left for class. I'd graduated from high school with a 3.8 GPA, got a partial scholarship to City College. I worked at CVS part-time, making $11 an hour, saved every penny for nursing school. My mother was so proud when I got into the nursing program at Mount Sinai School of Nursing. "My baby's going to be a nurse," she'd told everyone at church. We attended Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem every Sunday. The congregation had watched me grow up, celebrated my acceptance to nursing school, prayed over me during finals. When Mama got sick, they'd started a fund. Raised $12,000. It was beautiful, but nowhere near enough. That's when Victoria Chen found me. I was in the hospital cafeteria, third double shift that week, eating a wilted salad that cost $6.50. She approached me with the confidence of someone used to getting what she wanted. "Ms. Washington? Naomi Washington?" she'd asked. "Yes." "My name is Victoria Chen. I represent Damien Cross. I have a business proposition that might interest you." At first, I thought it was a scam. A sick joke. But Victoria was legitimate. She handed me her card. Partner at Chen & Associates, one of the top law firms in Manhattan. She explained the situation. Damien needed a wife for 6 months to satisfy his grandfather's will. He was offering $500,000 to the right candidate. She'd researched dozens of women. I fit the profile perfectly. Why not just marry someone from his own circle? I'd asked. Surely there are plenty of socialites who jump at the chance. Mr. Cross requires someone who won't become attached. Someone who understands this is purely business. Women from his social circle have expectations. They see marriage to Damian Cross as a permanent arrangement, access to his wealth and status. You, Ms. Washington, need money for a specific purpose. Once your mother's treatment is covered, you'll have no reason to contest the divorce. It was calculating, cruel even, but it was also true. I needed that money more than I needed dignity, more than I needed pride. I'll think about it, I'd said. Your mother's prognosis is 3 months without treatment. Think quickly. That night, I sat by Mama's hospital bed. She was sleeping, the morphine drip keeping the pain at bay. At 55 years old, she looked 70. The cancer had stolen her vitality, her joy. I held her hand, so thin now, bones prominent beneath papery skin. "I'm going to save you, Mama," I whispered. "Whatever it takes." She stirred, opened her eyes. Even clouded with medication, they were still that beautiful deep brown I remembered from childhood. "Baby, you're still here?" "Always, Mama." "You work too hard. You need to live your life, find a good man, start a family." She coughed, wincing at the pain. "Don't waste your youth on me." "You're not a waste, Mama. You're everything." She squeezed my hand weakly. "Promise me something, Naomi. Promise me you won't sacrifice yourself for me. I've lived a good life. You have so much ahead of you." I couldn't promise that, wouldn't promise that, because I'd already decided. I called Victoria the next morning and agreed to meet Damian. Our first meeting was in his office at Cross Industries, a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. The building was 63 stories tall, and his office occupied the entire top floor. The view was breathtaking. All of Manhattan spread out like a glittering kingdom beneath us. Damian had barely looked up from his computer when I entered. "Sit," he'd said, as if I were an employee coming for a performance review. I sat in one of the leather chairs across from his massive desk, my hands folded in my lap. I wore my best interview outfit, a navy blazer from Target, $32 on clearance, and black slacks from Marshall's, $18. "Victoria tells me you've agreed to the arrangement," he said, finally looking at me. Those gray eyes swept over me, assessing, categorizing. "Before we proceed, I need to establish some ground rules." "Of course." "This is not a romantic arrangement. I don't do romance. I don't do feelings. This is a contract. You provide a service, I provide payment. We maintain the appearance of a happy marriage in public. In private, we live separate lives." "I understand." No emotional attachments. No expectations beyond what's written in the contract. And absolutely no discussion of this arrangement with anyone outside of my lawyer and whoever you choose to confide in. Confidentiality is paramount. "What about my mother?" "What about her?" "Can I tell her the truth?" He considered this. "If you trust her to keep it quiet, yes. But if word gets out that this marriage is a sham, the deal is void. You forfeit all remaining payments." The threat was clear. I nodded. "I understand." "Good." He pulled out the contract, all 47 pages of it. "Read this thoroughly. Have a lawyer review it if you want, though you'll need to find one willing to sign an NDA. You have 48 hours to decide. I took the contract home that night and read it by the dim light of my studio apartment. Every clause, every subsection. It was airtight, designed to protect Damien from every conceivable angle. I was listed as an independent contractor providing spousal services. The money would be paid through a trust. If I violated any terms, I owed him everything back, plus damages. But if I fulfilled the contract, I got $500,000. Enough to save Mama. Enough to maybe, possibly, start over when this was done. I signed 2 days later. Now, standing in his penthouse as his legal wife, I wondered if I'd made a deal with the devil. Damien was handsome, yes, successful, obviously. But there was something cold in him, something unreachable. He looked at me the way someone might look at a piece of furniture. Useful, decorative even, but ultimately impermanent. I should go, Keisha said, breaking into my thoughts. She hugged me tightly. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. I'm serious, Naomi. I will. Thank you for being here. After Keisha and Victoria left, it was just me and Damien in that enormous apartment. He loosened his tie and poured himself another whiskey. Your friend seems concerned about you, he observed. She cares about me. That's fortunate. It's good to have people who care. There was something odd in his tone, almost wistful. But when I looked at him, his expression was neutral again. Do you? Have people who care, I mean? I have employees, business associates. It's the same thing. It's really not. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're right. It's better. Employees are loyal because I pay them. They won't leave unless someone offers more. Personal relationships are far less reliable. That's a lonely way to live. It's a practical way to live. He drained his glass. You should rest. You start your new role tomorrow. My mother is hosting a brunch to welcome you to the family. 11 o'clock. Wear something appropriate. I'll have my assistant deliver some options to your room. Can't I just wear my own clothes? I've seen your clothes, Naomi. No offense, but H&M isn't going to cut it at Eleanor Cross's table. The insult stung, but he was right. The next morning, I woke to find 3 designer dresses hanging in my closet, each with tags still attached. A cream Chanel dress, $6,200. A navy Oscar de la Renta, $4,800. And a rose-colored Valentino, $7,500. I chose the Valentino, figuring if I was going to play this role, I might as well commit. Eleanor Cross's townhouse was in the Upper East Side on 72nd Street, a 5-story brownstone worth at least $12 million. The interior was all old money elegance. Antique furniture, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings of dead relatives scowling from gilded frames. Eleanor herself was 62 years old, but looked 50, thanks to what I suspected was excellent cosmetic surgery. She was reed thin, dressed in Hermes, her blonde hair styled in a perfect bob. Her smile when she greeted us at the door didn't reach her cold blue eyes. "Damien, darling," she air-kissed both his cheeks. Then she turned to me, and her smile sharpened. "And you must be Naomi. How lovely to finally meet you." "It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Cross," I said, extending my hand. She looked at my hand as if I were offering her a dead fish, then took it limply. "Please, call me Eleanor. We're family now." The word family sounded like an accusation. Come in, come in. Brunch is ready." The dining room table could have seated 20, but it was just the three of us. The meal was catered by Danielle Boulud, probably cost $3,000. Eggs Benedict with caviar, fresh pastries, exotic fruits I couldn't name. "So, Naomi," Eleanor began, delicately cutting her egg. "Damien tells me you're a nurse. How quaint." "I work in the emergency department at Mount Sinai," I said, keeping my voice steady. "How noble, taking care of sick people." She made it sound like I cleaned sewers. "And where did you say you grew up?" "Crown Heights, Brooklyn." Eleanor's eyebrow arched. "Brooklyn, I see." She turned to Damien. "Darling, you always did have eclectic taste. First that Russian girl, what was her name? Natasha? Then that actress, and now a nurse from Brooklyn." "Mother," Damien's voice held a warning. "I'm just getting to know my new daughter-in-law," Eleanor said innocently. "Tell me, Naomi, where did you two meet? Damien's been so secretive about your relationship." I remembered his instructions. "At a charity gala, the one benefiting children's literacy last year." "Really? Which one? I attend so many." "The one at the plaza," I said, hoping I was right. I don't recall seeing you there, and I certainly would have noticed someone new on Damien's arm." Her smile was predatory. "You must have quite the magical hold on my son. He's never been one for commitment. 3 engagements broken in the past 5 years. Did he tell you about those?" "Mother, that's enough," Damien said sharply. "I'm simply being honest. I'm sure Naomi appreciates honesty." Eleanor turned back to me. "Camilla Vanderbilt. They were engaged for 2 years. Beautiful girl, Vassar educated, old family. Damien broke it off 2 weeks before the wedding. Then there was Sophia Chen, Victoria's cousin, actually. Lasted 6 months. And let's not forget Alexandra Pierce. That one only made it 3 months." Each name was a knife twist, meant to make me feel like an interloper, a placeholder. And it was working. "Those relationships didn't work out," Damien said flatly. "Naomi is different." "Different," Eleanor repeated, her eyes raking over me. "Yes, she certainly is. Tell me, dear, what does your family do? Are they in medicine as well?" "My mother was a secretary at a law firm," I said. "My father worked in security before he passed away when I was 12. The temperature in the room dropped. Eleanor's expression shifted from condescending to something colder. "I see. So you come from working-class stock. How refreshing." "My parents taught me the value of hard work and integrity," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "I'm proud of where I come from." "Of course you are," Eleanor said dismissively. "Though I must say, Damien, I'm surprised you didn't discuss this marriage with me before rushing into it. 6 months of dating, and suddenly you're married at City Hall? It all seems rather hasty. Some might even say suspicious." "Some might say it's none of their business," Damien replied. Eleanor's laugh was like ice cracking. "Oh, darling, when you're the only heir to the Cross fortune, everything is my business, especially who you marry. You do remember the prenuptial agreement your grandfather required in his will, don't you?" My blood went cold. Damien hadn't mentioned a prenuptial agreement. I glanced at him, but his face was unreadable. "The prenup is handled," he said. "Is it? Because I'd love to see it, just to ensure everything is in order. You know how particular grandfather was about protecting the family assets." Eleanor dabbed her lips with a linen napkin. "Naomi, dear, you did sign a prenuptial agreement, didn't you?" This was a trap. If I said yes, she'd demand to see it. If I said no, she'd know something was wrong with this marriage. Our legal arrangements are between Naomi and me, Damien said coldly. If you want to discuss my grandfather's will, call Victoria. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She knew something was off. I could see it in the way she looked at me, like a cat deciding whether the mouse was worth the effort. The brunch ended mercifully quickly after that. As soon as we were in Damien's car, a black Mercedes S-Class worth $130,000, I turned to him. Your grandfather's will requires a prenup? It's handled. Don't worry about it. Don't worry? Your mother is clearly suspicious. What happens if she challenges this marriage? She won't. She's difficult, but she's not stupid. Once the 6 months are up, and I have the shares, it won't matter what she thinks. He was gripping the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. She hates me. She hates everyone I date. It's not personal. It felt pretty personal. He sighed, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked tired. My mother married my father for his money. He knew it, she knew it, everyone knew it. They lived separate lives for 37 years until he died. She sees every woman I bring home as someone like her, a gold digger. She's not entirely wrong. I'm not a gold digger. This is a business arrangement. Exactly, which makes you honest at least, more than I can say for my previous relationships. He pulled into the underground parking garage of his building. Look, I know this isn't easy, but you only have to deal with my mother a few more times. Thanksgiving, maybe Christmas if we're still together by then. You can handle that. I wanted to argue, but what was the point? I'd signed up for this. The next few days settled into an uncomfortable routine. Damien left for work at 6:30 every morning, came home around 8 in the evening. We'd eat dinner together in silence, usually something his chef had prepared. Then he'd retreat to his office, and I'd go to my room. I visited my mother every day. The treatment was working. After just 1 week and 3 infusions, totaling $242,000, she had more color in her cheeks, more energy. The oncologist, Dr. Sarah Liu, was cautiously optimistic. The markers are responding well, Dr. Liu told me. It's early, but this is exactly what we hoped to see. I wanted to cry with relief. Instead, I held Mama's hand and smiled. See, baby, Mama said weakly. I told you God had a plan. I'd told her the truth about the marriage. She'd been horrified at first, then resigned. 6 months, she'd said. You can do anything for 6 months. And then you'll be free, and I'll be healthy, and we'll start over. That Friday night, 1 week after the wedding, Damien came home early, 6 o'clock. I was in the kitchen, attempting to make spaghetti. I'd given the chef the night off, wanting to feel useful, normal. Something smells good, he said, loosening his tie. Just pasta, nothing fancy. Better than another night of Philippe's pretentious cuisine. He grabbed a beer from the fridge, a Stella Artois, $3 a bottle. Want one? Sure. We ate together at the kitchen island, not the formal dining room. It felt almost normal, almost like a real marriage. My mother called today, he said. She wants us to come to dinner next Friday, with my Uncle Richard and his family. More opportunities for her to insult me? Probably. He smiled slightly. It transformed his face, made him look younger, more human. You handled her well, by the way. Better than most. Alexandra cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes. I've dealt with worse than your mother. Try 12-hour shifts in the ER with a head nurse who thinks you're incompetent. Why does she think that? I shrugged. I'm young, black, female. Pick your bias. He studied me over his beer. You're good at what you do, aren't you? I am. I can tell. You have that confidence, the kind that comes from competence, not arrogance. It was the first real compliment he'd given me. Something shifted in the air between us. Thank you, I said softly. We talked for hours that night, about our jobs, our lives, our fears. He told me about the pressure of running a multi-billion-dollar company, how his grandfather had groomed him from age 12 to take over, how he'd never had a choice in his own life. I told him about growing up poor, about watching my mother work herself to exhaustion, about choosing nursing because I wanted to help people the way no one had helped my father when he collapsed at work. At midnight, we were still sitting there, empty beer bottles between us, 3 each. I was pleasantly buzzed, warm and relaxed in a way I hadn't been since this whole thing started. I should go to bed, I said, but I didn't move. Yeah, he agreed, but he didn't move either. Our eyes met, held. Something electric passed between us. Naomi, he said, his voice rough. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible idea, he agreed. Then he kissed me, and I kissed him back. And all those careful boundaries we'd established dissolved like smoke. One night became a mistake I'd replay in my mind 1,000 times. We didn't make it to either of our bedrooms. The couch in the living room, overlooking Central Park at night, the city glittering beneath us like fallen stars. It was intense, passionate, desperate. Like we were both trying to fill some void inside ourselves. Afterward, lying in his arms, I felt his heart racing against my back. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? We'd just shattered every term of our contract, blurred every careful line we'd drawn. I should go, I finally whispered. His arms tightened around me for just a moment. Then he released me. Yeah. I gathered my clothes and fled to my room, my heart pounding. What had I done? This was supposed to be simple. A business transaction, 6 months and goodbye. Now everything was complicated. I heard his door close down the hall. The shower turned on. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just the alcohol. Just 2 lonely people seeking comfort. It didn't mean anything. But I knew I was lying to myself. The next morning, I woke up feeling queasy. Probably the guilt eating away at me. I threw on yoga pants and a t-shirt and went to the kitchen. Damien was already there, immaculate in a charcoal suit, drinking espresso. Good morning, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Morning. About last night. It was a mistake, I said quickly. We both had too much to drink. It won't happen again. Something flickered in his eyes. Relief? Disappointment? Right. Good. I'm glad we agree. But we didn't agree. Over the next week, the tension between us was unbearable. Every accidental touch felt electric. Every glance held weight. We were 2 people pretending to be strangers when our bodies remembered exactly what we'd done together. And then, 3 weeks after our wedding, I woke up feeling violently ill. I barely made it to the bathroom before I was sick. I blamed it on stress, on the rich food Damien's chef kept preparing. But when it happened again the next day, and the day after that, dread began to creep in. No, 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 no. It wasn't possible. We'd only been together once. The odds were astronomical. But deep down, I knew. Women's intuition, or maybe just terror recognizing itself in the mirror. I stopped at a Duane Reade on my way home from visiting my mother. Bought 3 pregnancy tests with cash, feeling like a teenager trying to hide something shameful. Back at the penthouse, hands shaking, I took all 3 tests. Positive. 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 I sank onto the bathroom floor, my vision swimming. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't part of the plan. The contract specifically stated no children. Clause 17, subsection B. Both parties agree that no children shall result from this arrangement. In the event of pregnancy, the party responsible shall immediately terminate their participation in this contract with no further compensation. I was pregnant with Damian Cross's child, and according to our contract, I just forfeited everything. The remaining $400,000. My mother's treatment. Everything. I couldn't tell him. I'd figure something out. Maybe I could hide it for the remaining 5 months. Then, after the divorce, I'd disappear, raise the baby on my own. Damian never had to know. But fate, or karma, or whatever cosmic force enjoys irony, had other plans. That weekend was the dinner at Eleanor's. Damian and I drove to her townhouse in tense silence. I was still reeling from the pregnancy news, trying to figure out my next move. My mother's 4th infusion was scheduled for Monday. $312,000 total so far. I couldn't lose that money now. Eleanor greeted us with her usual cold warmth. "Damian, Naomi, how lovely. Come in, everyone's already here." Everyone turned out to be Damian's uncle, Richard, a pompous man of 58 who ran the marketing division of Cross Industries, his wife, Helen, and their daughter, Cassandra. Cassandra was 28, blonde, beautiful in that particular way wealthy white women are beautiful, all carefully maintained perfection. She worked as the VP of Communications at Cross Industries. "Damian!" Cassandra squealed, air-kissing him. Then she turned to me, her smile freezing slightly. "And you must be the new wife. How unexpected." "Cassandra," Damian said warningly. "What? I'm just surprised. You always said you'd never get married, and then suddenly, boom, married to someone none of us have ever met." She looked me up and down. I was wearing a black Givenchy dress, $4,300, that Damian's assistant had selected. But under Cassandra's gaze, I felt like I was wearing a potato sack. Dinner was excruciating. Eleanor had seated me between Richard and Helen, while Cassandra claimed the seat next to Damian. She spent the entire meal reminiscing about their childhood, touching his arm, laughing at inside jokes I'd never understand. "Remember that summer in the Hamptons?" Cassandra said, her hand lingering on Damian's forearm. "When we were 16 and we snuck out to that beach party?" "Barely," Damian said, but he was smiling slightly. "You were so wild back then, before the company turned you into this serious businessman." She pouted prettily. "I miss fun, Damian." I gripped my water glass tightly. Were they flirting? Right in front of me? "So, Naomi," Richard said, his voice booming. "What is it you do again? Damian mentioned something about healthcare?" "I'm a registered nurse in the emergency department at Mount Sinai." "Ah, yes, healthcare." He said it the way one might say, garbage collection. "How do you find time for that with all your new social obligations as Damian's wife?" "I haven't quit my job, if that's what you're asking." Helen laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, honey, you'll quit soon enough. Once you start having babies, there's no time for little hobbies like work. My job isn't a hobby, I said, my jaw tight. I save lives. Of course, dear. I didn't mean to offend. But her smile said she absolutely did mean to offend. The nausea that had become my constant companion surged. I excused myself and fled to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to settle my stomach and my nerves. When I emerged, I heard voices from the study. The door was slightly ajar. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but I heard my name and couldn't help myself. She's completely wrong for him, Eleanor was saying. A nurse from Brooklyn? Please, it's obvious what this is. You think it's about grandfather's will? That was Richard. What else could it be? Damien needs to be married to inherit the controlling shares. The 6-month waiting period ends in January. This girl shows up out of nowhere, they get married at City Hall, no prenup that I can verify. It's a sham. My heart stopped. If you can prove it's a sham marriage, the will becomes void, Richard said slowly. The shares would go to you and me. Exactly. Which is why I've hired an investigator. Thomas Barrett. He's the best. If there's anything fake about this marriage, he'll find it. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from gasping. An investigator. They were going to expose us. The contract would be void. My mother's treatment would stop. Everything would fall apart. I stumbled back to the dining room, my mind racing. I had to warn Damien. But how? What could we do? When we finally left, 3 hours of torture later, I told him everything I'd heard. His jaw clenched. Thomas Barrett. He's thorough. Expensive. If my mother hired him, she's serious. What do we do? We make this look real. Very real. He glanced at me. No more separate bedrooms. No more keeping distance. We need to sell this marriage, Naomi. Because if my mother proves it's fake, we both lose everything. I thought about the pregnancy test hidden in my bathroom drawer. About the secret I was keeping from him. About how much more complicated this was about to get. Okay, I whispered. We'll make it look real. If only he knew how real it already was. The next morning, Damien's assistant, a terrifyingly efficient woman named Margaret, who made $85,000 a year, arrived with movers. They transferred all my belongings from my old bedroom into Damien's master suite. His bedroom was enormous, twice the size of my room, with a California king bed, a sitting area, and windows overlooking Central Park. This is for appearances, Damien said stiffly as the movers left. The investigator might interview staff, might check security footage. We need to look like a real couple. I understand. I'll sleep on the couch in the sitting area. You can have the bed. That night, lying in his bed that smelled like his cologne, expensive and masculine, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the baby growing inside me. 8 weeks along, according to the calculations. I'd have to tell him soon. The first trimester would end in a month, and I'd start showing not long after that. But every time I opened my mouth to confess, terror closed my throat. What if he accused me of trying to trap him? What if he demanded I terminate the pregnancy? What if he threw me out and my mother died because I'd broken the contract? The next few weeks were a strange dance of pretend intimacy. We'd have breakfast together, Damien reading the Wall Street Journal while I checked my phone. We'd go to events together, his hand on the small of my back, playing the devoted husband. At one charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, tickets $2,500 each, he introduced me to business associates with his arm around my waist. "This is my wife, Naomi," he'd say, and each time the word wife sent a confusing thrill through me. But at home, alone, we maintained careful distance. He worked late in his office. I read or watched TV or video called Keisha, who kept asking if I was okay. "Girl, you sound stressed," she said one night. "I'm fine." "You're lying. What's going on?" I wanted to tell her about the pregnancy, but I hadn't even told Damien. It felt wrong to share it with anyone else first. "Just dealing with his family. They're intense." "Rich people always are. Just remember, 5 more months and you're free." 5 more months. And a baby that would tie me to Damien Cross forever. My mother's treatment was progressing beautifully. By week 6, her cancer markers had dropped by 62%. Dr. Liu was calling it a remarkable response. Mama was gaining weight, had color in her cheeks again, was talking about the future. "Maybe when I'm better, we could take a trip," she said one afternoon. I was visiting her at the outpatient clinic where she received her infusions. "I've always wanted to see New Orleans. Your daddy proposed to me there. Did I ever tell you that?" "About 100 times, Mama." I smiled through my tears. "Don't cry, baby. These are happy tears or sad tears?" "Both. All the tears." She squeezed my hand. "How's married life treating you?" "It's complicated." All marriages are complicated. But that boy, he looks at you like you hung the moon when he thinks you're not watching. "Mama, it's not like that. It's just—" "I know what the contract says, baby. But contracts can't control the heart." If only she knew how right she was. That weekend, Damien had a work event. A cross-industries corporate retreat in the Catskills, a luxury resort called the Mohonk Mountain House. It was an annual tradition, 3 days of team building and strategic planning for the executive team. Spouses were invited. "You don't have to come if you don't want to," Damien said. "I know these things are boring." "Will your mother be there?" "Unfortunately." "Then I'm definitely coming. Can't give her any ammunition for that investigator." The resort was stunning, a Victorian castle on a mountaintop, surrounded by pristine forest. Our room, one of the premium suites, cost $1,200 a night. It had a fireplace, a balcony overlooking a lake, and one very large bed. "I can sleep on the floor," Damien offered. "Don't be ridiculous. The bed is huge. We can share." The words came out more confident than I felt. The first day was filled with meetings and presentations. I sat through a 4-hour strategic planning session, understanding maybe 30% of what was discussed. But I smiled and nodded and played the supportive wife. At dinner that evening, I was seated next to a man I'd never met before. He was handsome, probably early 30s, with dark skin and an easy smile. "Marcus Bennett," he introduced himself. "VP of Operations. You must be Naomi. I've heard a lot about you." "All good things, I hope." Damien doesn't say much about his personal life, so any information is precious. He grinned. "Where did you two meet?" I launched into the prepared story. Charity gala, instant connection, whirlwind romance. Marcus listened with genuine interest. "That's amazing." Damien seems really happy. "I've worked with him for 5 years, and I've never seen him this relaxed." "Really?" "Usually at these retreats he's all business, barely socializes. But tonight, he keeps looking over here." Marcus nodded toward the head table where Damien sat with the other senior executives. Sure enough, Damien was watching us, his expression dark. "He's probably just checking on me," I said. "Maybe." Or maybe he doesn't like seeing you talk to another man. Marcus's smile widened. I'm going to test a theory. Do you dance? Before I could answer, he'd led me to the dance floor where a jazz band was playing. It was innocent, friendly, but when I glanced at the head table, Damien's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might crack. The song ended, and Marcus returned me to my seat with a theatrical bow. It was lovely meeting you, Naomi. Damien's a lucky man. 10 minutes later, Damien appeared at my elbow. We're leaving. But dinner isn't over. Now. His voice was steel. I followed him out, confused and a little angry. We walked in tense silence back to our room. The moment the door closed behind us, he exploded. What the hell was that? What was what? I was just talking to your colleague. You were flirting with Marcus Bennett. I was not flirting. I was being friendly. He had his hands all over you. We were dancing. That's generally how dancing works. You're my wife. The possessiveness in his voice shocked me. In name only, remember? Your words, not mine. This is a business arrangement, Damien. You don't get to be jealous. I'm not jealous. But his eyes told a different story. Then what's the problem? He ran his hand through his hair, frustration radiating off him. The problem is that investigator is probably here somewhere, watching us. The problem is we need to look like a real couple, not like you're shopping for my replacement. The problem is... He stopped abruptly. The problem is what? Nothing. Forget it. No, say it. The problem is I can't stop thinking about that night. About you. About us. The admission seemed torn from him. And seeing you with him, laughing, enjoying yourself, it made me want to throw him through a window. My breath caught. Damien, this was supposed to be simple, a business transaction. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being simple. You stopped being just a contract to me. When did that happen? I whispered. I don't know. Maybe that first night when we stayed up talking until 3 in the morning. Maybe when you stood up to my mother without flinching. Maybe when I watched you with your mother at the hospital, the way you held her hand and told her everything would be okay. He moved closer. Or maybe it was that night on the couch when I realized I'd never felt that connected to another human being in my entire life. We can't do this, I said, even as my body swayed toward his. The contract. Screw the contract. He kissed me, and this time there was no alcohol to blame, no excuses, just raw need and emotion I didn't know how to process. We stumbled toward the bed, shedding clothes, all those careful boundaries burning to ash around us. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, I knew I had to tell him about the baby. This changed everything. He'd just confessed he had feelings for me. Maybe, possibly, we could figure this out together. Damien, I began, there's something I need to tell you. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He grabbed it, frowning. It's Victoria. She says it's urgent. He answered, his expression growing darker with each passing second. When? Are you sure? Jesus. Okay, I'll be back in the city first thing tomorrow. He hung up, his jaw tight. What's wrong? I asked. The investigator found something, someone from your past. His eyes, when they met mine, were cold again. All that warmth from moments ago vanished. Victoria got a tip that you were seen with another man, multiple times, at a coffee shop near the hospital. Her source says you two seemed intimate. My heart stopped. What? Who? His name is David Martinez. Victoria's sending me the photos now. The phone buzzed again. Damien pulled up the images and the color drained from my face. It was me, yes, at Starbucks near Mount Sinai, with a man. David Martinez, my ex-boyfriend from nursing school. We'd dated for 2 years, broken up 6 months ago when he moved to Boston for a job at Massachusetts General Hospital. I can explain, I said quickly. Can you? His voice was ice. Because these photos are dated. This one from 3 weeks ago. This one from last week. You've been seeing your ex-boyfriend while you're married to me. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you're having an affair. It looks like you've been using me for money while you maintain a relationship with someone else. He stood up, started pulling on his clothes. How long have you been sleeping with him? I haven't been sleeping with him. David's my friend. He was in town for a conference. We met for coffee. That's it. And you didn't think to mention this to me? Why would I? You made it very clear this was a business arrangement, that we weren't really married, that I shouldn't expect anything from you emotionally. My voice rose, anger replacing fear. You don't get to be jealous of my friendships when you've spent the last month maintaining this pretense that we're strangers who happen to share an apartment. That changed. You know it changed. When? An hour ago? Because up until then, you were perfectly content to keep me at arm's length. I was trying to protect myself, he shouted. I've been burned before. By women who wanted my money, my name, my connections. How do I know you're any different? The accusation hit like a slap. You think I'm like them? You think I want your money for myself? Don't you? You needed $500,000. I gave you that. Now you're pregnant, aren't you? The world stopped. My mouth fell open. How did you? I'm not an idiot, Naomi. The morning sickness, the way you've been avoiding alcohol, the prenatal vitamins I saw in your bathroom yesterday. His laugh was bitter. Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you planning to disappear after the 6 months with my child and a nice severance package? Tears streamed down my face. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. I found out 3 weeks ago. I was terrified. The contract says no children. I thought if I told you, I'd lose everything. My mother would die. And yes, I was scared of how you'd react, because you've made it abundantly clear that you don't do emotional attachments. So you lied to me. You want to talk about lies? This entire marriage is a lie. He flinched as if I'd hit him. Get out. What? Get out. Go back to the city. Go be with your ex-boyfriend. Go wherever you want. I don't care anymore. Damien, please. Leave, now. I gathered my things with shaking hands, tears blurring my vision. At the door, I turned back. For what it's worth, I wasn't lying about my feelings. This stopped being fake for me, too. But you're too damaged to see that. I left him standing there, alone in that beautiful room, and wondered if I'd just destroyed the best thing I never knew I wanted. I drove back to the city in a rental car, tears streaming down my face the entire 3 hours. When I arrived at the penthouse, I threw my clothes into a suitcase. I'd go back to my old apartment in Crown Heights. It was still vacant. I'd been paying rent because I couldn't break the lease. $1,500 a month that I could barely afford, but it was mine. My phone rang. Keisha. Hey girl, you okay? You sound weird in your texts. I broke down completely, told her everything. The pregnancy, the fight, Damien's accusation, my ex-boyfriend, David. Wait, Keisha interrupted. Back up.
David was in town and you didn't tell me? It was just coffee. Twice. He's engaged now, Keisha. To a pediatric surgeon in Boston. We're friends, that's all. Did you tell Damien that? He wouldn't listen. He thinks I'm using him. Are you in love with him? The question stopped me cold. Was I? When had that happened? I think I am, I whispered. God help me. I think I fell in love with my fake husband. Oh, honey, that's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or the saddest. I can't decide. It's sad. Definitely sad. He hates me now. Give him time. Men process emotions at the speed of continental drift. He'll come around. But 3 days passed with no word from Damien. I stayed at my old apartment, sleeping on the air mattress I'd left there, wearing my old scrubs to work. I'd texted him twice, both messages unanswered. On the 4th day, Victoria Chen called. Naomi, we need to meet. It's about the investigation. We met at a coffee shop in Midtown, ironically the same Starbucks chain where David and I had been photographed. Victoria looked immaculate as always, in a cream Armani suit, but her expression was grave. Eleanor's investigator has compiled a report, she said without preamble. It's damaging. The photos of you with David Martinez. Testimony from your neighbor in Crown Heights who says you're still paying rent there, which suggests you never really moved in with Damien. Credit card records showing you've been buying pregnancy tests. How did he get my credit card records? Thomas Barrett has connections, legal and otherwise. She slid a manila folder across the table. This is what Eleanor plans to present to the probate court. If she succeeds in proving the marriage is fraudulent, Damien loses the inheritance. The controlling shares go to Eleanor and Richard, and you forfeit all remaining payments under the contract. I opened the folder with shaking hands. It was all there. Photos that made innocent coffee dates look like romantic rendezvous. Financial records that painted me as someone maintaining a separate life. Even an interview with my landlord saying I'd asked to extend my lease. What about the pregnancy? I asked quietly. That's actually the most complicated part. If Eleanor claims the marriage was fraudulent from the start, the pregnancy doesn't matter. But if she claims the pregnancy violated the contract terms, you owe Damien back the money already paid. Approximately $320,000 for your mother's treatment. My vision swam. I don't have $320,000. I know, which is why we need to fix this. Victoria leaned forward. Here's what I propose. You and Damien issue a joint statement that the marriage was real, that you're expecting a child, and that you're working on your relationship. We provide evidence that the marriage is legitimate. Joint bank account, photos of you together at events, testimony from friends. He won't do it. He thinks I betrayed him. Then convince him otherwise. Because if you don't, you both lose everything. I left that meeting with my head spinning. How could I convince Damien of something when he wouldn't even speak to me? That night, my mother called. She'd been discharged from her latest infusion and was staying at a recovery house near the hospital. Her voice was weak but happy. Baby, I've got good news. Dr. Liu says my latest scan shows the tumors have shrunk by 78%. 78%, Naomi. She's talking about remission. Actual remission. I burst into tears, relief and fear and joy mixing together. That's amazing, Mama. So why do you sound so sad? Just tired. Long shift. Baby, I didn't raise a liar. What's wrong? I told her everything. The fight, the investigation,
the threat of losing the money. I didn't tell her about the pregnancy. One revelation at a time.
Oh, Naomi,
Her voice was heavy with guilt.
this is all my fault. You got into this mess because of me. No, Mama, don't say that. I made my choices. But they were choices made out of love for me, and now you're paying the price. She paused. Do you love him? This Damien Cross? I think so. Yes, I do. Then fight for him. Not for the money, not for the contract. For love. Real love is worth fighting for, baby. I learned that from your daddy. We didn't have much, but we had love, and that made us rich in all the ways that mattered.
After we hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and made a decision. I was going to fight. Not for the money, although I needed it. Not to fulfill the contract, although legally I should. I was going to fight for Damien Cross because somewhere in the last 6 weeks, he'd become more to me than a business transaction. He'd become the person I thought about when I woke up, the person whose laughter made my day, the person I wanted to share my life with, contract or no contract. But I needed proof. Proof that David meant nothing to me romantically. Proof that my intentions were genuine. Proof that I loved Damien, not his money. I called David. He picked up on the second ring, his fiancée Sarah laughing in the background. Naomi, hey, how are you? Sarah and I were just talking about you. We're getting married in March, and we'd love it if you could come. David, I need a favor. A big one. I explained the situation, minus some details. David was horrified. Of course I'll help. I'll write a statement, do a video call, whatever you need. Naomi, you know Sarah and I are solid. Those coffee meetings were just two old friends catching up. If your husband thinks otherwise, he's an idiot. He's not an idiot. He's hurt. He's been burned before by people using him. Then prove you're different. Prove you love him. I spent the next day gathering evidence. I got David's written statement, notarized, confirming we were friends, that he was engaged, that there was nothing romantic between us. I got my landlord to clarify that I'd kept my apartment as a safety net, not because I planned to leave Damien. I compiled photos of Damien and me together, the ones where we looked genuinely happy, not staged. And I wrote Damien a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, handwritten on stationery I bought at Papyrus for $12. Damien, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I should have told you about the pregnancy immediately. I should have been honest about seeing David. I was scared, and fear made me make bad choices. But I need you to know something. This stopped being fake for me the night we stayed up talking until 3 a.m. It stopped being a contract when you held my hand at my mother's bedside and told her she was going to be okay. It stopped being about money when I realized I was falling in love with you. I'm carrying your child. That terrifies me. But what terrifies me more is losing you. Not because of the contract, not because of the money, but because somewhere in the last 6 weeks, you became my person. The one I want to share good news with. The one whose opinion matters more than anyone else's. The one I choose, every day, regardless of any piece of paper we signed. David is my past. He's engaged to someone else. You are my present, and, if you'll have me, my future. I love you, Damien Cross. Not your money, not your name, not your connections. You. The man who works 18-hour days because he cares about his employees. The man who secretly donates millions to children's hospitals but won't let anyone publicize it. The man who bought my mother flowers every week, thinking I wouldn't notice. The man who, despite all his walls and defenses, let me in. I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm not asking you to forgive me immediately. I'm just asking you to let me prove that I'm different, that what we have is real, that this marriage, accidental though it may have been, is worth fighting for. Your wife, for real this time, Naomi. I delivered the letter to his office at Cross Industries, left it with his executive assistant, a woman named Stephanie, who made $72,000 a year and looked at me with sympathy. I'll make sure he gets it, she promised. 3 days later, I still hadn't heard from him. My mother's 8th infusion was scheduled, another $78,000. The total was now approaching $400,000. I was terrified Damien would cancel payment, but the money went through. Then, on a Thursday evening, someone knocked on my door in Crown Heights. I opened it, expecting Keisha or maybe a delivery driver. It was Damien. He looked terrible. Unshaven, circles under his eyes, his usually perfect suit rumpled. But his eyes, those gray eyes I'd fallen in love with, were soft. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside, my heart pounding. He entered my tiny studio apartment, looking around at my humble furniture, my nursing textbooks, my life before him. "I read your letter," he said, "about 50 times. And? And I owe you an apology. I jumped to conclusions. My ex-fiancée Camilla cheated on me with my business partner. Alexandra was seeing me and 2 other men simultaneously. Sophia," he shook his head. "I've been used so many times, I stopped believing anyone could actually want me for me. So when I saw those photos, I assumed the worst. I should have told you about David. Yes, but I also should have given you the chance to explain before I kicked you out." He moved closer. "Victoria showed me the statement from David, the evidence you compiled. But that's not why I'm here." "Why are you here?" "Because I'm in love with you. I think I have been since that first night when you looked at me and saw a person, not a bank account. When you argued with my mother and defended your parents' memory. When you held my hand during a panic attack I had about my grandfather's will and didn't judge me for being weak." His voice cracked. "You make me want to be a better man, Naomi. Not a richer man or a more successful man. A better man. The kind of man who deserves someone like you." Tears streamed down my face. "I love you too. So much it scares me." "We're having a baby," he said wonderingly. "A baby that wasn't part of the plan, but somehow feels like the most right thing that's ever happened to me. You're not mad about the pregnancy?" "Mad? Naomi, I'm terrified. I'm going to be a terrible father. I don't know the first thing about kids. My own father was distant, and my mother is, well, you've met her." He laughed shakily. "But I want this. I want you. I want our family. Real family. Not a contract, not an arrangement. Real." He pulled me into his arms and I melted against him. "What about the investigation? Your mother?" "Let her investigate. We'll give her exactly what she wants to see. A real marriage. Because that's what this is now. I'm filing paperwork tomorrow to tear up the contract. No more clauses, no more terms, no more business transaction. Just us." "What about your grandfather's inheritance?" "I don't care. If I lose it, I lose it. You and our baby are worth more than any amount of shares or money or corporate control." He cupped my face in his hands. "Marry me again. For real this time. With flowers and guests and vows we actually mean." "We're already married." Then renew our vows. Let me stand in front of everyone I know and tell them I choose you. Not because a contract says I have to, not because my grandfather's will demands it, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Yes, I whispered. Yes, yes, yes. He kissed me, and it was different from before. No desperation, no alcohol, no contracts hanging over us. Just love, pure and simple and real. We didn't know then that Eleanor's investigation was about to explode in ways we couldn't anticipate. That the truth would hurt people we cared about. That the revelation waiting for us would change everything we thought we knew about Damien's family. The bomb dropped 2 weeks later at what was supposed to be our vow renewal ceremony. Damien had insisted on doing it properly this time. We'd send invitations to 100 guests. The ceremony was scheduled for the rooftop garden of the Gramercy Park Hotel, cost $35,000 for the venue alone. I wore a custom Vera Wang gown, $18,000, my baby bump just barely visible at 14 weeks. My mother was there, looking healthy and beautiful in a lavender dress we'd bought at Nordstrom, $450. She'd been declared in remission just 3 days earlier. Tears of joy had flowed freely in Dr. Liu's office. $412,000 in treatment, and my mother was cancer-free. She had her life back, and I had mine. Keisha was my maid of honor, stunning in emerald green. Damien's best man was Marcus Bennett, who'd apologized profusely for causing any trouble with his innocent dancing. The guests included Damien's colleagues, my nursing friends, our church community, everyone who mattered to us. Everyone except Eleanor. She'd RSVP'd, yes, of course. Eleanor Cross wouldn't miss an opportunity to judge. But she arrived late, during the cocktail hour before the ceremony, and she wasn't alone. She'd brought Thomas Barrett, her investigator, and a lawyer named Harrison Thorne, whose retainer was $30,000. Victoria spotted them first. She immediately pulled Damien and me aside. "She's going to make a scene," Victoria warned. "I don't know what she found, but she looks triumphant. We should ask her to leave." "No," Damien said firmly. "Let her play her hand. We have nothing to hide anymore. This marriage is real. Let her try to prove otherwise." The ceremony began at sunset, golden light painting the Manhattan skyline. Damien stood at the altar in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. I walked down the aisle on my mother's arm, and when Damien took my hand, I felt complete. "We are gathered here today," the officiant began, a kind woman named Reverend Patricia James, who we'd found through my mother's church, "to witness the renewal of vows between Damien and Naomi Cross." "Actually," Eleanor's voice cut through the moment like a knife. She stood, her face a mask of cold fury. "Before we proceed, I have information this congregation needs to hear." "Mother, sit down," Damien said, his voice dangerous. "I will not. This woman has lied to you, manipulated you, trapped you with a pregnancy, and I have proof." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My hand tightened on Damien's. "Ms. Cross," Reverend James said firmly, "this is highly inappropriate. Please sit down, or I'll have to ask you to leave." "I'm not going anywhere until everyone here knows the truth." Eleanor gestured to Thomas Barrett, who stepped forward with a laptop. "Play it." On a projector screen we'd set up for wedding photos later, a video began to play. It was security footage from Damien's building, dated 6 weeks ago. It showed me leaving the penthouse, getting into a car, driving to Crown Heights. Entering my old apartment. The timestamp showed I'd stayed 4 hours. She maintained a separate residence, Eleanor announced. She never truly lived with my son. This marriage has been a fraud from the beginning. That's not proof of anything, Victoria called out. Many married couples maintain separate properties. There's more. Another video. This one from the coffee shop. David and me, talking, laughing. The angle made it look more intimate than it was.
She's been seeing her ex-boyfriend throughout this so-called marriage.
He's engaged to someone else, I shouted. We're friends, that's all. Then explain this. Barrett opened a folder, pulled out documents. Financial records showing that Naomi Washington received a payment of $100,000 from Damian Cross the day before their marriage. Not a gift, not a loan, a payment for services rendered. The crowd gasped. Damian's face went pale. It was for my mother's medical treatment, I said, my voice shaking. Damian helped me when I had nowhere else to turn. Helped you? Or bought you? Eleanor's smile was vicious. My son paid you to marry him so he could inherit his grandfather's estate. This entire marriage is a business transaction, a fraud. And under the terms of Maxwell Cross's will, any fraudulent marriage voids the inheritance entirely. The room erupted in chaos. Guests shouting, cameras flashing. Someone must have tipped off the press because photographers were appearing at the edges of the rooftop. That's enough, Damian roared. The room went silent. Yes, our marriage started as a contract. Yes, I paid Naomi to marry me. But that's not what this is anymore. I love her. She loves me. We're having a child together. Whatever this marriage was in the beginning, it's real now. Love? Eleanor laughed bitterly. You don't even know what love is, Damian. You've never known. Just like your father. Don't talk about Dad like that. Why not? It's the truth. Your father didn't love me. I didn't love him. Our marriage was an arrangement too. His family needed my family's pharmaceutical connections. I needed social status. We each got what we wanted. And you're just like him, Damian. Cold, calculating, incapable of real emotion. That's not true, I said, stepping forward. Damian is nothing like that. He's kind and generous, and he cares deeply, even if he doesn't always show it. Eleanor turned her icy gaze on me.
And you little gold digger, you saw a vulnerable, desperate man and you exploited him. You probably planned the pregnancy too, didn't you? To trap him permanently?
Mrs. Cross, my mother's voice rang out, strong despite her recent illness. I raised my daughter to be honest, hardworking, and compassionate. She agreed to help your son because her mother was dying and she had no other options. If you want to judge someone, judge me for being sick. Judge the healthcare system for making treatment unaffordable. But don't you dare judge my daughter for doing whatever it took to save her mother's life. The room erupted in applause. Eleanor looked furious. This is irrelevant, she snapped. The point is, the marriage was fraudulent. The will is void. Damian loses his inheritance. Not quite. Victoria stepped forward, her smile sharp. See, while you were so busy investigating Naomi, you missed something crucial. Maxwell Cross's will doesn't require a love match. It requires marriage. Period. As long as Damian is legally married when the 6-month period ends, he inherits. The motivation for the marriage is irrelevant. But it's fraud. It's a valid legal marriage, recognized by the state of New York. They filed joint tax returns. They cohabitate, at least part-time. And most importantly, they're expecting a child together. Courts don't annul marriages when children are involved, Eleanor. You know that. Eleanor's face turned purple with rage. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Victoria pulled out her own documents. Because while you were investigating Damien's marriage, I was investigating you. And I found some interesting things, like the fact that you've been embezzling from Cross Industries for the past 15 years. $3.7 million, funneled through shell companies and offshore accounts. The room went dead silent. That's absurd, Eleanor sputtered.
Is it? Because I have statements from your accountant, your financial advisor, and several offshore bank managers. You've been stealing from your own son's company, Eleanor. The same company your father-in-law built. The same inheritance you're trying to protect. Damien looked stricken. Mother, tell me that's not true. Eleanor's mask finally cracked. You don't understand. That money was mine. I was your father's wife for 37 years. I earned every penny of that fortune. Putting up with him, with his family, with this life I never wanted. So you stole from the company? From the employees who depend on those resources? I took what was rightfully mine. Her voice rose hysterically. I gave up everything for this family. My career, my dreams, my life. I was supposed to be a concert pianist. I had talent. But your grandfather said no crosswife would work. So I married your father and played the perfect society wife and hated every minute of it. That money was compensation for the life I lost. 37 years of lies, Damien said quietly. Did you ever love any of us? Dad? Me? Eleanor's silence was answer enough. Security, Victoria called. 2 security guards who'd been standing by appeared. Ms. Cross needs to leave. She's no longer welcome at this ceremony or any Cross family event. As Eleanor was escorted out, still protesting, claiming her lawyer would fix this, demanding that someone listen to her, I felt something unexpected. Pity. She'd spent her entire life trapped in a prison of her own making, too proud to leave, too bitter to find happiness. But I also felt relieved. The threat was gone. The truth was out. Everyone knew our marriage had started as a contract, but they'd also seen how real it had become. Richard and his family had left during the confrontation, probably realizing that Eleanor's fall meant their own plans for corporate control had failed. Cassandra had been texting furiously on her phone the entire time, probably already leaking the story to her media contacts. The remaining guests, mostly our real friends, broke into applause as the security guards disappeared with Eleanor. Well, Reverend James said, adjusting her glasses with a smile. That was certainly unusual. Shall we proceed with the actual ceremony? Damien pulled me close. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry my family put you through that. Your mother's pain isn't your fault, and we survived it. Together. Together, he agreed. We renewed our vows as the sun set over Manhattan, surrounded by people who actually loved us. When Damien kissed me, it felt like a promise. Not the kind written in contracts, but the kind written in hearts. The news coverage was brutal for Eleanor. The embezzlement scandal made headlines. Cross Industries matriarch arrested for fraud. Society queen's secret theft. She was arraigned 3 days later, bail set at $5 million. Richard posted it, probably hoping she'd redirect some of her stolen money his way. But Damien was firm. He pressed charges, hired a forensic accountant who found the full extent of Eleanor's theft, $4.2 million over 16 years.
The board of directors voted unanimously to pursue maximum penalties. Eleanor ultimately accepted a plea deal: 18 months in a minimum security facility, full restitution of stolen funds, and permanent removal from any Cross Industries board positions. The judge was lenient because of her age and because she'd never been in trouble before. But the social consequences were devastating. The friends she'd cultivated for decades turned their backs. The clubs she'd belonged to revoked her memberships. The social status she'd sacrificed so much for evaporated overnight. Richard was forced to resign from Cross Industries after internal investigation revealed he'd known about some of Eleanor's schemes and failed to report them. He lost his salary of $385,000 a year, his stock options, his company car. Helen filed for divorce 2 months later, claiming half of everything in a vicious court battle. Cassandra tried to spin the situation in the media, giving interviews painting herself as the innocent victim of her family's crimes. But her own colleagues at Cross Industries had had enough of her self-promotion. She was quietly asked to resign with a severance package of 2 years' salary, $160,000, contingent on her signing an NDA. The karma wasn't limited to legal consequences. Eleanor, once the queen of Manhattan society, found herself alone. Her friends abandoned her. Her family splintered. Even her hairdresser at the salon she'd frequented for 20 years refused to book her appointments. The woman who'd valued status and money above everything else lost both, and gained nothing but a prison sentence and the knowledge that her son would never forgive her. But our story didn't end with Eleanor's fall. That was just the clearing of obstacles. Our real story was about what we built afterward. 6 months after the vow renewal, our daughter was born. We named her Maya Grace Cross, 7 pounds 3 ounces, with her father's gray eyes and my dark curls. Damien cried when he held her for the first time, this man who'd spent his whole life afraid of emotions. He sobbed like a child, whispering promises to her about being a better father than his own had been. My mother, fully in remission and glowing with health, was in the delivery room with us. She held Maya and wept with joy. "You're going to have such a beautiful life, baby girl," she whispered. "Your mama and daddy are going to show you what real love looks like." We moved out of the sterile penthouse and bought a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, close to my mother's new apartment. The brownstone cost $3.8 million, but it felt like home in a way the penthouse never had. We filled it with color and laughter and the chaos of new parenthood. Damien cut back his hours at Cross Industries. He hired a co-CEO, a brilliant woman named Jennifer Williams, who made $2.5 million a year and was far better at the day-to-day operations than he'd ever been. Damien shifted his focus to the company's philanthropic arm, establishing the Maya Cross Foundation to help families afford cancer treatment. The foundation's first project was to fully fund the experimental immunotherapy program at Memorial Sloan Kettering. 300 patients a year would receive free treatment, no questions asked, no insurance denials. The program cost $12 million annually, funded entirely by Cross Industries' profits. "This should have been available to your mother from the start," Damien told me as we toured the new facility. "No one should have to sell themselves to save someone they love." I'd gone back to work at Mount Sinai, but only 3 days a week. The other days, I was home with Maya, or volunteering at a community health clinic in Crown Heights, or working with the foundation to identify families who needed help. My best friend Keisha often joked that I'd won the lottery. But she was wrong. The lottery is luck. What Damien and I had was something we'd fought for, earned through honesty and forgiveness and the willingness to be vulnerable. A year after Maya was born, Eleanor was released from prison. She sent a letter asking to meet. Damien debated for weeks before agreeing. They met at a small cafe in Queens, neutral territory. I stayed home with Maya, but Damien told me everything afterward. She looked old, he said, his voice heavy. Small, like prison had shrunk her somehow. What did she say? She apologized, not for getting caught, for the theft, for the lies, for the cruelty. He rubbed his face tiredly. She said she spent 18 months in therapy, court-mandated. She realized she'd been angry her entire life. Angry at her parents for pushing her into a marriage she didn't want. Angry at my father for not being the prince she'd imagined. Angry at me for reminding her of him. She said the anger poisoned everything. Do you forgive her? I don't know. Maybe someday. But I told her she can't be part of Maya's life until she proves she's changed. Real change, not just words. Eleanor took that to heart. She moved to Portland, Oregon, 3,000 miles away. She got a job teaching piano to children at a community center, making $32,000 a year. She sent Maya birthday cards, but never asked to visit. She was, in her way, respecting Damien's boundaries. Richard and Helen's divorce was finalized with a brutal settlement. Helen got the house in Greenwich, Connecticut, worth $2.4 million, half of Richard's remaining savings, which amounted to $1.7 million after legal fees, and spousal support of $12,000 a month for 10 years. Richard moved into a modest two-bedroom apartment in Westchester, got a job as a marketing consultant, making $120,000 a year, a fraction of his cross-industries salary. He tried to rebuild a relationship with Damien, but it was too late. The trust was broken. Damien was cordial at necessary family functions, but nothing more. Cassandra had moved to Los Angeles and was working as a mid-level publicist at an entertainment firm, making $85,000 a year. She still posted on social media about her fabulous life, but the photos looked empty. She was alone, chasing the status her family had lost, not understanding that status without substance is just loneliness with better lighting. Marcus Bennett became one of our closest friends. He and his wife Rachel had twin boys the same age as Maya. Our families had dinner together every week. The kind of easy friendship that came from genuine affection rather than social obligation. My mother thrived. She volunteered at Abyssinian Baptist Church, joined a book club, took art classes at the community college. She was living the life the cancer had almost stolen from her. And she loved being a grandmother, spoiling Maya with homemade cookies and hand-knitted blankets and stories about her father, my daddy, who would have loved to meet his granddaughter. 2 years after Maya was born, Damien and I were lying in bed one Saturday morning, Maya asleep between us, when he said something that made me cry. Do you ever regret it? The way we started? No, I said honestly. Because every path that led me to you, to this moment, was worth it. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. I used to think love was a weakness, something that made you vulnerable, easy to hurt. He stroked Maya's curls gently. But now I think love is the only thing that makes us strong. You made me strong, Naomi. You and Maya. You're my foundation. We built this together, I reminded him. The good and the bad. We chose each other every day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That Sunday, we went to church with my mother. Damien had started coming regularly, finding solace in the community, in the message of redemption and grace. Reverend James welcomed us like family, and Maya delighted the congregation by singing along to the hymns in her tiny, off-key voice. After the service, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 24, with tired eyes and wringing hands. Mr. Cross, I'm sorry to bother you, but I heard about your foundation, about the cancer treatment program. Of course. Do you need help? It's my sister. She's 22, stage 3 breast cancer. She doesn't have insurance and the treatment costs. Her voice broke. I took her hand. Give me her information.
We'll take care of it. The relief on her face reminded me of how I'd felt that day in Victoria's office, being offered a lifeline. This time, I was the one offering it. The circle was complete. Over the next 3 years, the Maya Cross Foundation helped 947 families afford cancer treatment. 92 patients went into full remission. Every single one of them sent thank you letters. We kept them all in a special room in the foundation office. Damien would read them sometimes when he was having a hard day. "This is what money should do," he'd say. "Give people hope. Give them a chance." When Maya was 4 years old, I got pregnant again. Twin boys, Alexander Marcus and Joshua David, named after friends who'd supported us through our hardest times. Damien was terrified of having 3 children, convinced he'd mess it up somehow. But watching him with our kids, patient and loving and present in a way his own father never was, I knew he'd broken the cycle. We never forgot where we'd come from. Every year on our real anniversary, the day we renewed our vows, we'd go back to that rooftop garden and remember. Remember the contracts and the lies and the fear. Remember the moment we chose truth over convenience, love over safety. "Do you think we would have made it?" I asked one year, "if Eleanor hadn't forced the truth out?" "I think we would have found our way eventually," Damien said, "because what we have is stronger than secrets, stronger than contracts, stronger than anything that tried to tear us apart." The lesson I learned through all of this wasn't about money or contracts or even karma, though karma certainly played its part in Eleanor's downfall. The lesson was about authenticity, about having the courage to be vulnerable, to admit when you're wrong, to fight for what matters. Eleanor spent her life in a prison of her own making, maintaining appearances rather than seeking happiness. She valued the wrong things and lost everything that mattered. Richard and Cassandra followed similar paths, chasing status instead of substance, and found themselves alone. But Damien and I chose differently. We chose honesty, even when it was painful. We chose forgiveness, even when it was hard. We chose love, even when it was scary. 10 years after we first met in that cold office where he'd offered me a contract, Damien and I sat on our Brooklyn porch, watching our children play in the backyard. Maya was teaching her brothers how to garden, her hands covered in dirt, her laughter filling the air. My mother sat nearby, reading a book, Cancer-Free for a Decade. Every day a gift. "Do you ever miss the penthouse?" Damien asked, his arm around my shoulders. "The fancy dinners, the society events, the glamorous life?" I looked at our messy, beautiful, real life and smiled. Not even a little bit. Good, because I'm thinking we should add on to the foundation, open a second location, maybe help families with other diseases too. Heart disease, diabetes, anything that makes treatment unaffordable. We'd need to expand the endowment. So we expand it. I'll sell some personal assets, the yacht we never use, the vacation home in Aspen we visit once a year. He grinned. "Turns out I don't need all that stuff. I just need this. You, our kids, our purpose." That night, after the children were in bed, I found the old contract in a box in our closet. 47 pages of legal terms that had once defined our entire relationship. I showed it to Damien.
Should we burn it? He asked. No, let's keep it, as a reminder of where we started and how far we've come. We put it in a safe deposit box, along with our wedding photos, both ceremonies, and Maya's birth certificate. A record of our journey from transaction to transformation. The truth is, we all make deals with life. Some are contracts signed in desperation. Some are promises made in love. What matters isn't how the deal starts, but how we honor it along the way. Whether we choose to hide behind terms and conditions, or whether we have the courage to step out from behind the paperwork and be real. Eleanor never learned that lesson. She stayed behind her walls until they became her prison. But Damien and I tore down our walls, brick by brick, and found freedom on the other side. Sometimes in the night, I still wake up and watch Damien sleep. This man I agreed to marry for money and stayed with for love. I think about that scared 26-year-old nurse who walked into his office with nothing but hope and desperation. I wish I could tell her that it would all work out, that the contract would become obsolete, replaced by something infinitely more valuable. But maybe she needed to live through it. Maybe we both did. Maybe the only way to find real love is to first accept the fake, then have the courage to demand better. Our story isn't a fairy tale. It's messier than that, more complicated, more human. We fought and failed and forgave. We made mistakes and learned from them. We built something real from a foundation of lies. And that authenticity became our greatest strength. The money mattered in the beginning. It saved my mother's life, and for that, I'll always be grateful. But in the end, it wasn't the money that saved us. It was the choice to love honestly, to fight for each other, to value substance over appearances. That's the lesson I want to teach my children. That's the legacy I want to leave. Not wealth or status or social connections, but the understanding that real love isn't transactional. It's transformational. It changes you, challenges you, makes you better than you were before. And it's worth fighting for, even when the odds are stacked against you. Especially then. As I watch my family, our beautiful, messy, real family, I realize that this is what wealth actually looks like. Not penthouses and designer clothes and society galas,
But laughter in the backyard, and sticky fingers at dinner, and bedtime stories that run too long because the kids beg for one more chapter. This is the fortune I was really seeking all along. I just didn't know it yet. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.